in the shadows of Cleveland's industrial valley, where the city forgets it's unwanted. There's a place known as Kingsbury Run. A place where something was waiting to be found. September 1935. What they found would terrify an entire city. This isn't garbage. It's a body, headless, and it won't be the last. Once the Great Depression set in, the morality of the city collapsed completely. Panhandlers and prostitutes were out in numbers, jostling pedestrians right off the sidewalks. By the 1930s, Cleveland was considered the third largest automobile industry in America. At 60 feet below street level, the Cleveland Industrial Valley was considered the heart of the city. Once the darkness settled over the flats, most of the factories became deserted, while others continued operating throughout the night with their tall chimney stacks gushing out black smoke and flames. Ragged vagabonds would begin staggering out of the darkness, scavenging aimlessly among the railroad tracks and riverbanks. A lot of the vagrants that lived in the flats basically was an aftermath of the Great Depression. You know, they didn't have jobs, they were out of jobs, they were used to scavenging for food on the streets, and that's where many of them came from. The flats also contained an abundance of railroad tracks that were used to transport the factory-made materials all across the U.S., from Oregon to Maine. Many of the railroad lines exited the valley through a side gully called the Kingsbury Run, a dried-up creek bed that once flowed to the Cuyahoga River. This area of the flats was purchased by the ones who owned Cleveland's Terminal Tower. They purchased a nickel-plated railroad to acquire the rights to Kingsbury Run so they could install another rapid transit line route to bring in the upper-class residents from the Shaker Heights suburbs. This narrow gully stretches for a mile, shrouded in total darkness between steep banks strewn with trash. During the day, it is a drab and colorless place, traversed with railroad tracks hemmed in between cliffs. At night, the run becomes lost in total darkness. Which many of the older tramps refused to enter, believing it was haunted. On September 23, 1935, an African-American teenage boy discovered two headless corpses of men laying in the weeds at the bottom of Jackass Hill.
Keep looking along the bank. Found something here.
Over there.
All right, let's check it out.
This was near East 55th Bridge, not far from Kingsbury Run. The younger male was identified as Edward Andersey, a known pornography dealer from the west side of Cleveland. The younger male had rope burns on his wrist, indicating that he was held captive. Both bodies were also emasculated. The heads were later discovered. Four months later, not far from where the previous bodies were located, a hacked-up female torso was found. The city newspapers reported about a fourth decapitated body being discovered in the Kingsbury Run area near the East 55th Bridge, where the nickel-plated railroad police house was located. The article stated the victim's head laid 1,000 feet away at Woodland Avenue and East 51st Street Bridge, next to the rapid transit tracks. The fairly new clothes found at the crime scene indicated that the dead man was not a homeless person. And because of the lack of blood at the crime scene, hinted that the killer worked indoors. Later, the city's coroner determined that the victim was alive when decapitated. It was decided in 1936 that Cleveland would host the National Republican Convention at the magnificent Municipal Auditorium. Distinguished delegates would arrive in the city by planes and trains and automobiles from each of the 48 states. It was also decided that same year by the movers and the shakers of Cleveland to arrange a world fair in the city. It would be similar to the spectacular one that was held in Chicago back in 1893. Among the attractions at the Great Lakes Exposition was the Cleveland Police Exhibit, which was arranged and sponsored by Elliott Ness in the city. The display presented the latest crime-fighting techniques. This exhibit also displayed a death mask made of a severed head found a year earlier. For the cost of a dime, spectators could enter Ripley's, believe it or not, auditorium to view instruments of crime and violence and other strange oddities. Unbeknownst to the out-of-towners, another oddity was taking place right outside the entrance gates of the Great Fair. A mad killer was prowling the streets of Cleveland at night, looking for human prey. During all this gaiety and glamour, the headhunter had struck again, but this time on the west side of the Cuyahoga River in the suburb of Brooklyn. A headless body of a man floating in Big Creek near Clinton Road was believed to be the killer's fifth victim. September 10, 1936, a dismembered female body was found in Kingsbury Run, floating in a stagnant water pool beneath the East 34th Street Bridge. Miles from the Kingsbury Run, on the extreme east side of the city, a headless torso of a young mother was washed up on Euclid Beach at the foot of East 156th Street. A headless skeleton of a 40-year-old African-American woman was found beneath the Lorraine and Carnegie Bridge, which spans the Cuyahoga River. The skull was later recovered. Most of the crime scenes offered little or no evidence. The lack of blood indicated that the killer operated somewhere else. Contrary to what many believed, most of the victims were not derelicts, but people who were well-groomed. Another thing that was kept from the public during the same period was that there were other decapitated bodies showing up in Newcastle, Pennsylvania.
Downtown area, code 3 to Houston.
A man's dismembered body was found 1 month later, floating in the Cuyahoga River near West 3rd Street and the Erie Railroad tracks. This killing was unlike the others because of all the organs missing along with the heart, which the coroner stated that the killer ripped out with his bare hands. Because this victim was muscular and well nourished, along with clean fingernails, and was neatly groomed, told investigators that he was not a homeless person. The city's coroner, Dr. Gerber, became fascinated with the murder case and wrote about his own theories about the killer. Through his lengthy studies of the hideous murders, he came to believe that the killer had some kind of medical training who recognized anatomical landmarks during the dismemberment of the bodies. Cleaning the body remains, wrapping limbs in brown paper secured with rubber bands, showed an obsessive, neat personality. It was also determined that some of the body parts were reserved by refrigeration before being dumped at the crime scene. Because the killer murdered both men and women, ruled out any sexual motivation. Gerber presented to the law enforcement that the killer may be some kind of a mad doctor of high intelligence conducting insane experiments. This belief that the killer was a doctor gained momentum in the minds of detectives working the case. This also included Elliot Ness, who concluded that there must be a bloody laboratory with a large refrigeration unit hidden somewhere in the city. This thought haunted the police for years, believing there was a place somewhere in the city that was crammed with all the missing body parts. To date, these body parts were never found. The coroner also estimated that the killer had superhuman strength with phantom-like qualities because of his uncanny ability to not to be seen. What baffled the investigators was, other than the first victim, there was clearly no signs of restraints, drugs, alcohol, in the other victims' systems, nor defense wounds or traces of skin under their fingernails. Because 7 of the victims died of a neatly and deliberate decapitation, suggested to some that the killer may have used hypnosis to restrain his victims. The fact that only 2 of his victims were from the lowest stratum of society and 9 of the bodies were never identified indicated that the killer may have chosen some of the victims that arrived from out of state for the Great Lakes Fair. Female body parts wrapped in a burlap sack were found floating in the Cuyahoga River near Superior Avenue on April 8, 1938. Her severed leg was later discovered in the Mohawk River near Albany, New York on May 2, 1938. Her head was never recovered. On August 16, 1938, a 30-year-old blonde female's head, along with a 50-year-old male's head in a can, was discovered at Lakeshore Drive and East 9th Street. Near the woman's remains was a March 5, 1938 copy of Collier's magazine. After those 12 victims were found, the National Guard pilots of the 112th Observation Squadron, 37 Division, made reconnaissance flights photographing the area where the last 2 bodies were found, hoping that the area shots might reveal some hidden path or paths that the killer may have used to travel in and out of the area unnoticed. The fame of these torso murders in Cleveland became international, where even the Nazi propaganda used it, pointing out that in the United States, a serial killer can murder people in our society without any fear of being caught. Because the killer had the audacity to keep returning to his original body dumping ground, the Kingsbury Run, angered and frustrated the authorities. There was a possibility circulating around City Hall that there may be some kind of a connection between the vagrants living near Kingsbury Run and the mad killer. This talk gave the safety director reason not only to clean up the city's eyesore of vagabonds, but to possibly curtail the killings. So on August 17th, 1938, just after midnight, Elliot Ness arranged for 25 detectives along with 11 police cruisers to raid the shanties under the Carnegie-Lorraine Bridge. The vagrants were rounded up and taken to workhouses while their makeshift homes were set ablaze. Not only did the raid yield nothing towards the investigation of the Torso murders, but caused a stir in the newspapers, accusing Elliot Ness and the city officials of using the homeless as scapegoats in their inability to catch the real killer. Mass murderers were a rare phenomenon prior to World War II. The Cleveland Butcher managed a remarkable feat by murdering and disarticulate at least 12 of his victims without leaving a single clue to his identity. At one point, the killer placed 2 of his victims so close to Elliot Ness's office, located at City Hall, it seemed like the killer was taunting city officials. A veteran detective, Peter Merlo, that worked years on the case, believed the total of victims was closer to 40. Other possible victims were 3 in Youngstown, Ohio, at McKee Rocks, 6 in Newcastle, PA, between 1921 and 1934, and 2 bodies found in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania in 1951. Supposedly, there was one victim who did escape the clutches of the Mad Butcher near Kingsbury Run in the fall of 1935. A large, muscular man who was out of work at the time befriended a man who said he was a doctor. The stranger invited him back to his office for something to eat and a pair of shoes. But as he ate the meal, the gentleman began feeling drowsy and sick to his stomach. Realizing he was poisoned, he lunged for the door and escaped, all the while the doctor shouting for him to come back and have some more to drink. He woke up 3 days later in an empty boxcar in the flats. later hopping a freight train to Chicago, vowing never to return to Cleveland. There was one suspect that Elliot Ness was involved himself in the interrogation. His name was Dr. Francis Sweeney, who was part of a medical unit that did amputees during World War I. Supposedly, Dr. Sweeney failed 2 polygraphs that were conducted by polygraph expert Leonard Keeler. Unfortunately, Sweeney was the first cousin of Cleveland Congressman Martin L. Sweeney, who was also related through the marriage to Sheriff O'Donnell, both political opponents of Ness. Afterwards, Dr. Francis Sweeney committed himself to the Sandusky Mental Hospital to prevent further inquiries from the police. Over the years, Sweeney sent postcards to Ness and his family, mocking and harassing them into the 1950s. In 1938, March 1938, residents in Sandusky, Ohio, became very uncomfortable when they read in the paper of a report that a dog came out of the woods holding a human leg, which the coroner says was severed from a human body. It's interesting because the doctor, Sweeney, Dr. Francis Sweeney, the one that was interrogated by Elliot Ness for being, for suspicion of being the torso murderer, he committed himself into a mental hospital in Sandusky. So it seems like Dr. Sweeney lived out that way.